Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Chad Silber. You are now watching our extended coverage of both protests and demonstrations in downtown Greensboro and downtown High Point tonight. Right now there is a mandatory curfew in Greensboro and High Point. It started just about 7 minutes ago at 8 o'clock and runs through 6 tomorrow morning. City leaders want the streets of Greensboro to be quiet after some protests turned violent over the weekend downtown. Greensboro police will be out again tonight as protesters are gathering downtown. This time they'll be out enforcing the mandatory curfew. We've got team coverage tonight as crowds gather and disperse in both High Point and Greensboro. Let's start off our team coverage with WFMY News 2's Adoria Chumba, who's live in downtown Greensboro. Adoria.
All right, I am here in downtown Greensboro, and we did see moments ago a lot of the protesters disperse, but there are still some here standing in front of the International Civil Rights Center right there. There's drumming. You can see them standing there with their signs. Just before that, some of the other marchers here who left said that, they left on their own accord as individuals, and they don't have any control over what anybody else decides to do. And we do have some of the allies for the organizers and organizations in the community here standing right there in front of the ICRC. Some of them, have just talked about why they're here. Again, the protests and to protest the injustice and things like that. So we're just trying to get a sense of what they're going to do next. As we said, the curfew is in place. It was in place at 8 o'clock. And now it's 8 minutes after 8. It's not clear how police intend to enforce that, and it's not clear what these remaining protesters are going to do. They are standing there in front of the ICRC. But let me take you to give you a look at down Elm Street, South Elm Street here. You can see the street has kind of cleared. There are no vehicles here. There's a police patrol car up ahead. Just a few vehicles remaining here. Again, that curfew it kicked in at 8 o'clock, and we started seeing the people who were downtown just clearing out the area again. It is their individual choice to do that. So I'm going to go back again to just look at the people who are gathered here. Again, some of them, most of them allies of community organizations and activist groups in the city of Greensboro. Again, you can see their signs there. There's that painting of the fist, the Black Lives Matter. They have been standing there in place. It's not clear yet what they intend to do. Like I said, the police haven't said really how they plan to enforce this. And again, it is this individual's choice to leave the area or not. They're choosing now to stay right in front of the ICRC, the Civil Rights Center, the Civil Rights Museum. Again, we're going to stay with them and just kind of get an understanding of what is going on. Again, so far so good. They are peaceful. They are just drumming and holding place. Nothing disruptive going on. Again, they are allies representing or standing in place for. Okay, so right now I do hear some message from a police vehicle. We're just going to walk back that way to see what is happening over there. I do hear some commands coming from. Not clear from where we are, but we're walking towards that to just kind of get an understanding of what is happening. I do hear, we just heard for a moment there, an announcement, just not clear where it's coming from, and you could see the protesters just turned around to face the direction of that announcement. Again, we're about 11 minutes into when that curfew kicked in, and the drumming has gotten louder. We're just going to let you listen in on them and what they're saying. All right, looks like they're just standing in defiance and standing ground. All right, we're going to stay here and just kind of stick around with this group. Again, they're peaceful, they're drumming, they're standing right here in front of the Civil Rights Museum. Again, we're going to stay with them for a moment, but we'll send it right back to you in the studio.
Adora, thank you. We do have reporters on both sides of this small gathering of protests there on Elm Street. WFM1 News' Susan Alma McCarty is on the other side. Alma, what does it look like from your vantage point?
Well, Chad, just a few moments ago, the vehicle was over here at the corner of Market Street and Elm Street with a megaphone, and they told protesters, it's time for you to go home. The curfew has been enacted. We have officers out here on scene. I believe that Adora has seen some officers on her end of North Elm Street as well. So these people are in the middle of the street. I do want to mention that up until this point, and even right now, the protest is still peaceful. We want to mention that because a lot of people out here today have said we have not highlighted that portion of it. I would say that this is only a small fraction of people. There were a lot of people that started at the ICRCM, the International Civil Rights Center and Museum, walked down Market Street, went over to the police department to protest, and then came back in this direction all before the curfew. Several of those people, if not the majority of them, have left. This is one group we're seeing here. There may be other protesters in other parts of downtown. We will keep you abreast of that situation. But right now, what I can tell you is police have come out to say specifically to this group of protesters, it is time to go home. And because a curfew has been enacted, they can actually arrest these folks, charge them with a $500 fine, I believe, or put them in jail. That is a possibility with a curfew. Again, a curfew has been enacted for both Greensboro and for High Point. We are just going to take a listen for a moment to see what is going on this side of Elm Street. We are walking at this point a little closer to the protest to hear what these folks are saying. The police officers are telling the demonstrators who are gathered in the middle of the street to go home, that they are in violation of the law. They are still, many of them, just standing there in solidarity. What we are seeing here is a small group of protesters, smaller I would say relative to the number of people who were out here earlier today starting at the International Civil Rights Museum. But some people, although the curfew has been inactive, have said that they're not going to leave, that they are going to continue to protest, they are going to continue to make their voices heard. There are probably, I would guess, about 50 or so in this crowd. Lots of different people within it. Although police have said a few times that they would like them to head out, go home, because there is a curfew. Yeah. Another thing we just want to note with all of these protests, you may hear foul language, you may see foul language on some of these signs. These are things we cannot control. We are just reporting on this as it is happening right now. I do want to stress again for the viewers who are just joining us that this is the tail end of a protest that had begun earlier in the afternoon. People met outside of the International Civil Rights Center and Museum, marched down Elm Street over to Market Street, kind of made a rectangle and went back to the Greensboro Police Department where they protested at the steps of the Greensboro Police Department for about 20 or so minutes before making their way back here. There were several people in the group who spoke and said, you know, go home. The number of people who are out here, some of these folks may not represent us, so
as Alma mentioned, you are looking at live pictures in downtown Greensboro where a group of protesters, demonstrators have effectively blocked off Elm Street downtown in front of the International Civil Rights Center and Museum, which, as you know, is very symbolic that they are out there in front of that building. You can see, and you've seen, this is basically a ghost town. Outside of this group of people, basically everyone has left downtown Greensboro, and for good reason. There was a curfew that went into effect at 8 o'clock about 20 minutes ago. This group has now also been told to leave by police. You've heard, if you've been watching this live stream, they've come over a megaphone asking people to leave, saying go home. You can't be here right now because of the curfew. As you look along some of the buildings along the side of Elm Street, you can see that most all of them are boarded up, either because they have damage to their building already or because they are trying to prevent damage to their building. As you've heard, dozens of buildings on Elm Street downtown were vandalized, both last night as well as Saturday night, when these demonstrations really took a turn for the worse. And Greensboro Police, as well as Mayor Nancy Vaughn, have said that outsiders have came in under the guise of being part of this demonstration and caused this damage. There's also people gathering in High Point tonight, and WFMY News 2's Marissa Tansino, she is in High Point at the Walmart. Excuse me, there aren't people gathering there, but she is in the Walmart area where there are barricades up right now. Hey, Marissa.
Hey, Chad. Yeah, we're here at the Walmart on South Main Street in High Point, and you can see this is where people broke in last night, and Walmart has upgraded their barricade procedure. Clearly, they have chains, they have carriages, not only in the front here, but also stacked up high, and then behind the carriages, they have plywood that's nailed together behind it. We can see those nails. Then I'm going to take you over here where the windows are, and there's mulch lined up on a crate, and it's not going anywhere. So you can see that they really have prepared in case any crowds try to come here tonight and do what they did last night. Now, just to recap and give you some background on what happened last night, multiple people, according to High Point Police, were breaking into this Walmart here on South Main Street in High Point. I'll give you another look at those barricades tonight. Police say 40 to 50 people got inside from the pharmacy side of the business, and they don't know how much exactly was taken, but a couple of PlayStations and TVs were recovered. That's according to police. Now, take a look behind me here, and I want to show you the High Point Park Ranger that I spoke with her, and she said that she's going to be sitting out here out front for the rest of the night, just kind of keeping an eye on things, keeping an eye on the parking lot. We've seen multiple police officers driving around the area. There are a couple of cruisers in the back of this parking lot right now, just kind of keeping an eye on things. This Walmart will remain closed until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. The park ranger told me that the hours are adjusted for the Walmarts in this area, so they will only remain open from 8 until 5. There were people driving through here. Chad, you mentioned just a short time ago that there is a curfew in High Point, and when people were coming through asking if this Walmart was closed, they asked the park ranger what was going on, and sounds like the police are playing some music maybe, I'm not really sure, but the park ranger did tell some people that the Walmart is closed and they will have to get home soon because as of right now the curfew is in place. So just keep that in mind. There is a curfew in High Point. Walmart has prepared. For now, we're going to keep an eye on things here. Chad will send things back to you.
Marissa, thank you. I'm glad that you mentioned people who were out and about and those who aren't allowed to be out and about. I'm going to go over the list of the people. A lot of people have been asking us, who are the people who are allowed to be out right now during this curfew? And according to the city of Greensboro's executive order today, there's a list of people who can be out and about right now. That includes law enforcement, firefighters, other public employees, rescue squad members. So imagine EMS, doctors, nurses, employees of hospitals or other medical facilities, on-duty military personnel, on-duty employees of public utilities, public transportation companies, journalists, individuals traveling directly between their place of work and their residence. So if you have to go to work, you are allowed to be out, but you can only go to work and go to home. You can't be driving around everywhere. And then also people looking for medical care. People need to go to the doctor or the hospital. People fleeing dangerous circumstances or people who are experiencing homelessness. But that is it. Outside of that, if you are caught outside, if you are, out and about, you could be fined, you could be arrested, both in Greensboro as well as High Point. And we've seen a lot of people still out and about, especially in downtown Greensboro, where a group of about 50 or so protesters are demonstrating in front of the International Civil Rights Center and Museum. And that's where WFMY News 2's Adoria Chumba is right now. Adoria, what's the latest?
All right, so behind me is that group of protesters. There are roughly about 50 protesters that I can see. I've counted here behind me, and they have been here standing across the street just for a couple of minutes just after the curfew time kicked in, which was 8 o'clock. Again, they have been peaceful. There was drummings happening, and they've chanted a few times. And you can see, let me just show you their formation here, which is pretty interesting about this group. So I understand that some of them here are allies of the organizations, and of course allies of black people, as they have said, as of their black neighbors, as they have told me, and they are positioned as a line to protect some of the ones that are inside. And there you also have the same thing behind, and you can see it's a diverse group of people there, and you can see they're all locked arms there, and they have their cards. Moments ago they were drumming, as I mentioned. So, but right now they just standing right there across the street. They haven't moved from that position since they lined up in formation there just about 8 o'clock. Up the road just about a block away, is a police vehicle there. Moments ago, that vehicle did announce that these individuals were in violation of the curfew and ordered them to leave or be arrested. But the vehicle hasn't approached the protesters yet. I'm not clear how they intend to enforce that curfew. Again, some of the organizers that walked up to me did say that, they are not forcing anybody to stay. They're not forcing anybody to leave. These people are here on their own accord as allies and standing for the cause that has caused all these marches to erupt throughout the country. And here in the Triad, again, this is the third day of protest marches. this is unlike what we have seen in over the past couple of days. We saw several hundreds of people march through the city, and then after that peaceful protest ended, we did see some vandalism. But here we have a smaller group, a more measured group, so to speak, and they are here positioned in front of the Civil Rights Museum. They have spoken to each other. Now you can hear them chanting, "Our time is what now?" Those are some of the chants that they have made. Black Lives Matter. We're going to just listen to them for a little bit, just to get a sense of what they're passionate about right now. All right, so that was some of the chants that they are calling out, and you can see some of the protesters exit from inside the formation. Still the allies, they're maintaining their stance and their position, backing each other, one line facing the other end and then the other facing the opposite side. Again, no movement so far. They have been standing firm, standing their ground over there. As the police, we see the police vehicles is turned around but is facing the opposite direction. Not clear what the officer there is trying to do, but you can see the blue lights facing that other direction. I haven't heard that announcement over the last couple of minutes, but again, they're just standing there in position while the protesters are here in front of the Civil Rights Museum, as I said. But we're going to stay with this group here. I understand that there is another group further down on South Elm Street. We're probably going to make our way that way to see what the situation is while my colleagues stand guard here and just kind of see what happens here. Again, it's not clear how the Greensboro police intend to enforce that curfew, but then again, these individuals here say that they are standing in solidarity with the black community over what's happening, and many of them here are allies in support of that, standing peacefully, not doing anything, not disrupting anything. The road is closed. There are no cars moving, so they're not disrupting anything right now. Again, just standing their ground and making their voices heard and their intentions known. Back to you in the studio.
Adora, thank you. You know, we've seen so many images over the past couple of days, both peaceful like that, but then on the other end of the spectrum, really just violent. And obviously, all of that has come after I guess the real protesters have been out. And we're just getting some video into the newsroom that was very disturbing to watch. Take a look at this. This is from Saturday night's protests. This is a skate shop in downtown Greensboro. You can see a protester throw something at the window, shattering it, and then he or she went inside and grabbed something, and then all of a sudden a rush of people race into this building and start stealing what mostly looks like skateboards, and then people just keep filing in, start throwing things around. It's alarming to see something like that. I want to show it one more time so you can see it. The owner tells us, so the owner went in the next day, obviously, to fix up the shop and just kind of survey the damage. And the owner told us about half of their product in the store was taken. I mean, look at all of these people just flooding into this store. It's unbelievable. And then you wonder why, you know, the message is muddied. You know, the message that all of these demonstrators are trying to get across is because of things like that. All right, we are going to go to WFMY News 2's Alma McCarty. She is also in downtown Greensboro right now. Alma, you were on the side of that protest where the police officers came and used a megaphone. Have they returned at all, or do you see more police officers over on your side?
Well, Chad, I've heard messages from police officers. It seems as though they are driving around the downtown area. Police have been blocking off this part of Elm Street from down at Friendly all the way to McGee Street. Now, I actually ended up speaking with the man that you were talking about, the owner of that skate shop, a stolen skate shop, he told me that he wasn't even in town when this all went down and people broke in and looted a lot of his shop. He's obviously devastated, heartbroken. He did tell me, though, he's all about protesting peacefully. He's all about the message. He stands behind that, actually. But he said when it is taken to this level of violence, of breaking into businesses and taking stuff out of them, he's not with that. So that's something we also want to say here. Saturday's protest was very peaceful for 12 hours, and then towards the end, there was unrest. At this point now, there is yelling. However, there has not been any kind of an issue between police officers and protesters, although the curfew has been enacted. So we're gonna have, the crowd at this point, I'll have Kyle, my photographer, turn the camera around. There's probably, right here at this location, I would say 50, 60 people. I'm not the best at estimations, to be honest with you, but it's far fewer people than were out here earlier today protesting from around 5:30 to 8 o'clock. So this is what we are seeing right now. They're standing in the middle of the street, refusing to yield. Again, as Adure said, you have allies who are on the outside of this group of people. Although police have told them to leave, to go home, that they are violating curfew, they are still here and they are still standing their ground.
Hey, Alma, obviously you were out yesterday kind of observing some of these different demonstrations as well. Yes. I'm wondering how today compares to yesterday, at least in the atmosphere. How does it feel out there compared to what you saw yesterday in High Point?
Well, yeah, Chad, I think the discussions and the dialogue in High Point is obviously very different from what we've been seeing in Greensboro. At the height of the protest in High Point, there were probably about 300 people. They had driven through the city past High Point University, circled around and went to the High Point Police Department. Then they marched over, some in their cars, to the governmental plaza, the courthouse, had kind of a rallying speech there, and then went back to the police station. I said it a lot last night, but you had police on the other side of this barricade, but then at one point, Chief Kenneth Schultz was speaking with some of the protest leaders who were gathered at that barricade, and he came around into the crowd, met them face to face, talking with a lot of them. And that probably went on, I would say, for an hour or so before people started dispersing. And I know Marissa is actually over there at the High Point Walmart. That is only expected to be a small group of people who may have caused the damage there. And then throughout the night, there were some other issues that had gone on, but it wasn't as, obviously there's a lot of passion here. I mean, people are protesting the death of George Floyd. They are angry, reasonably so. And so this is day 3 in Greensboro. I cannot speak to the other 2 days. I can only speak to what I've heard, which is, the protest went on for a while very, very peacefully, and then it began to take a turn at the very end. So I'm just gonna have a listen now. Let's take a listen into what the protesters are chanting at this moment. And I did want to...
Boy, that silence really kind of sends a message on its own, even without the chanting and the talking. Alma, I know that you kind of have your finger on the pulse of Elm Street right now. we saw over the last couple of days that there were a lot of police officers out and about, some both on bicycles, but then also on the other end of the spectrum, those in what looked like riot gear and gas masks. Have you seen anything on that end of the spectrum, or the police officers you see now, are they basically the bike cops?
Chad, from what I have seen and what I had seen earlier today, it appeared as though GPD was getting their officers ready for something. We do see a number of police officers who are on their bicycles, but then over here you do see folks who are wearing, masks. They are wearing tactical gear. So it appears that they are getting ready. At this point, they have not engaged with the protesters more than just saying a couple times over the megaphone, "You're gonna have to go. Curfew has started. You're gonna have to go." But at this point, they are flanking really the outer perimeter, it seems, of downtown. Of course, for those who might be just joining us, we are on Elm Street, and the protesters are lined up outside of the International Civil Rights Center and Museum. They have not moved for quite a while. I want to say, for almost 40 minutes they have been in this location, and they have stood their ground. Police have not made any moves other than to say, "You guys need to be going home."
Alma, have you, in your last couple of days out on the ground there, has this been a similar scenario where police officers have given space to the protesters and not, gotten right up with them, but kind of given them a block or so to do their thing?
Absolutely. What I really saw in High Point yesterday was people, you had them in their police gear, which for many people can be very intimidating, but they were not engaging with folks. There were a few water bottles, in fact, in the very early stages, only a few that were thrown into the police barricade at High Point's police station. They did not react. At one point, they had some police officers who were on top of the police station. They brought those down. So it seemed as though, at least in the very early part of the day, there was very much, "Hey, we hear you. You can speak out. It is your First Amendment right. We're going to let you do that." Even though, anyway. I think that towards the end of the day, when I was out there around 10 o'clock at night, there had been an incident in downtown High Point where glass was broken. I'm told by High Point police officers that a Molotov cocktail was thrown into an occupied building. Luckily, that fizzled out, but that is what prompted that heavy police presence at that end of the day. So what we are seeing here of police kind of just hanging back, they're going to hang back, I think, for as long as they can. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, what it is going to look like if they approach. It seems as though some of the officers are getting a little bit closer. They had been further down near Friendly. Now they're coming closer. You see several police officers there in their gear on Market Street. So that's kind of what we are seeing out here. I know that Adore Achumba, our reporter who is on the other side of this protest, she was actually in downtown Greensboro. We might want to send it over to her to get a sense of what is going on. Oh, nope, we are going to stay on me because you see police with shields and gas masks now walking across Elm Street. And they are standing on the ends of Elm Street. There are also bike cops that are over there in the corners that are coming out. You're hearing some of the protesters say, "Do not break ranks." We're just going to stand here carefully. I'm actually going to put on my mask. To be clear here, there has been no violent acts today. However, what they are doing is because there is a curfew tonight that was enacted by Mayor Nancy Vaughn and the city of Greensboro. We're just going to listen in right now. They're bringing out the megaphone again. Police are walking slowly forward.
Might switch. Right here.
They are starting to walk down the other side. The protesters are starting to walk down Elm Street as the police are approaching. We're going to back up. We are at Limelight, which is across the street from the International Civil Rights Center and Museum. The police are holding the line right here. Police are now speaking over a megaphone.
Greensboro Police Department, you're in violation of the city curfew. I order those assembled at Elm in February 1 to immediately disperse. You must leave the immediate area immediately. Return to your home. If you remain in the immediate vicinity, you're in violation of the law. No matter what your purpose, you must return home. If you do not disperse, you may be arrested and/or subject to other police action. Other police action may include actual arrest or removal, use of riot control agents and/or less lethal munitions, which can cause risk of injury to those who remain. You are to disperse immediately.
Police are moving forward again. We are now following the police line as they go to meet the protesters, who are backing up slowly, but holding a line as well. If I had to estimate, there's probably about 60 police officers, including the bike cops. They are bringing the police megaphone back down that is mounted on top of the vehicle. The protesters are chanting, "Hands up, don't shoot." All of the police officers I've seen are wearing gas masks.
You're dispersed the area immediately. You're dispersed and leave traveling south on Elm Street. Turn around and leave the area.
Just want to give you a quick update. You are now looking at two different angles of the same situation here on Elm Street in downtown Greensboro. Police have now approached about a group of about 50 protesters who will not leave the area even though we're 45 minutes into an imposed curfew. So you're getting two sides of the same situation.
street and do so immediately. The demonstration is now over. Everyone must leave the area now so that normal operations may... This is a test of the long-range acoustic device. The demonstration is now over. Everyone must leave the area now so that normal operations may continue. Anyone continuing to demonstrate will be arrested and detained for a minimum of 24 hours. Again, the demonstration is now over. Anyone impeding normal traffic will be arrested.
All right, you are still watching a situation unfold in downtown Greensboro, right on Elm Street, basically outside the International Civil Rights Center and Museum. A group of about 50 protesters were outside the museum and have decided that they weren't going to leave, even though a curfew went into effect about 50 minutes ago. Just within the past 10 minutes, Greensboro Police in riot gear have now formed a line and are walking down Elm Street toward this group of protesters that have now moved about a half a block south of February 1 Place. And it looks as though the protesters are getting pushed. I mean, they're going further down the street, but there is still a good amount of space between the police officers and this group of people.
We want to note that these protesters have been peaceful. They have been standing there holding signs. This is not a belligerent protest nonetheless, but again, this curfew started now. It's been 50 minutes in, and you've been listening into police and their demands saying disperse the area. It is time to go home. If you do not leave, you could be arrested and you could be detained for 24 hours. Again, you're looking at live pictures of South Elm Street in downtown Greensboro, where officers are holding onto their bikes, moving closer and really trying to push the protesters back.
You could see in some of our shots earlier that Greensboro Police have actually blocked off Elm Street for quite a few blocks, both north and south of this situation. They wanted to make sure they were keeping all vehicles and others who, looky-loos, if you will, out of the area as they dealt with this situation. So, I mean, no cars can go up or down Elm Street downtown right now, and I imagine that that was a good call to make, especially because this situation could turn volatile. I mean, it's very unpredictable. We've seen what happened the last couple of nights. Granted, it's still a couple of hours from when that's happened the past couple of nights, but I think police are doing what they can now to disperse this and to try to diffuse a situation that could escalate.
So you have been watching this coverage, and it's been interesting, Chad, to look at it. On one side of the vantage point of South Elm Street, it looked like a ghost town. But you look at the other side, then you saw the protesters, and then you saw the police officers arrive. They formed that line, and then you saw them closing in closer and closer. But I would like to let's listen in a little bit further, because we want to be able to put you into this perspective, and let's listen in and we can understand what is happening along South Elm Street. Let's pull up that sound.
Green shirt, backpack, Molotov.
Be ready for us to take a live pic.
We still want to give you that live picture of the situation unfolding in downtown Greensboro right now on Elm Street, where a group of police officers have decided that now is the time they're going to get these protesters out of the street. Now that we are almost an hour into the curfew that went into effect at 8 o'clock. And you look along the sides of the streets there at all of those buildings, and it's very eerie to see all of these buildings boarded up. I mean, this is something that's occurred over the past couple of days. On Saturday night, more than a dozen buildings were damaged by vandals late into the evening. And then yesterday, even more of them were damaged as well. So a lot of these businesses, Cheesecakes by Alex was damaged last night. You can just see that right there on your screen. And so those that have been damaged, they've been boarded up, but then others taking a proactive approach to potentially avoid a similar situation.
These protests, about 50 of them, the protesters, they have been on the move for the last several hours. They were at one time in front of the Greensboro Police Department, ended up around the 100 block of South Elm Street outside the International Civil Rights Center and Museum. As you see police slowly move on, we're now at about they crossed 200 blocks, so now outside Cheesecakes by Alex. So they're slowly making their approach and slowly pushing these protesters south on South Elm Street. And you can hear them saying, back up, but in the meantime, you can also hear the protesters chanting, no justice, no peace.
Right, and over the last couple of hours, we have really seen this crowd disperse. I mean, when Adure and Alma were out at this scene a couple of hours ago, before the curfew went into effect, there were hundreds of people outside the police department, and they were peacefully protesting. But then at about 7:50, some of the organizers, I think it came over a loudspeaker and said, "We're approaching the curfew. Do what you will, but just know that we are approaching a curfew." And so since that time, a lot of people have left, have gone home, and I guess, obeying the new law that's now in effect.
All right, we are hearing from the control room that the protesters now in front of Natty Green's. So this is Hamburger Square. People who go to downtown often, we do,
right,
know exactly where Natty Green's is. But again, slowly pushing their way south, and maybe we'll see if they pass over the train tracks. So we will continue to watch this live coverage along with you. I have reached out to Mayor Nancy Vaughn to find out her thoughts on what is happening on South Elm Street. Have not yet heard back from her, but it was earlier today that she announced that the city was issuing that curfew. That curfew started at 8 o'clock tonight. It will continue until 6 a.m. And the penalties include a misdemeanor charge. You could be fined $500. You could end up spending 30 days in jail, but you have also been listening to the demands from Greensboro Police on the scene saying you could be arrested and detained for 24 hours. So they have been warning them repeatedly, them being the protesters, that it is time to head home, as the curfew is stated, because it's now been in effect for 56 minutes.
And not a lot of people fall under the exemptions for this curfew. I'm just looking at the list right now. There are police officers, firefighters, public employees, EMS, doctors, nurses, employees of hospitals, military personnel, employees of public utilities, transportation companies, journalists, individuals, people going to work and going home. You are allowed to go to work and you are allowed to go home as long as that's all you're doing. People who are looking for medical care, going to the hospital, or experiencing homelessness. So I can't imagine that this group falls under that, and that's why the police are there to try to disperse them.
All right, let's continue to listen in as the police get closer and closer as they continue to push back the protesters. Control room, do we know, is that the group of protesters still around the size of about 50, or do you think they're dispersing?
They certainly sound a lot quieter than they sounded before.
And I'm not too sure if because they're dispersing or it's because
right, and
of the distance.
And so it looks as they're going west now toward like the Nathaniel Green statue at that roundabout there. So they've gone off of Elm Street now, at least the ones that we just saw, and headed, I guess, west.
From what I saw, Chad, it looked like they kind of went both directions,
right,
from what I could see from this vantage point, which is kind of hard.
but we haven't heard, and it's possible that we're just too far away from this group, but we haven't heard them doing their chants. And you know, early on they had drums, and they were chanting along to drums, and we haven't heard that in a while. And okay, it looks like that group was potentially part of the one on Elm Street, and they are now being dispersed, but also being followed.
Yeah, let's listen into what police are telling this group.
This way, went south. Get too far away from either. We're just sit here.
Right, you are looking at live pictures right now. It appears that officers are taking somebody into custody. We don't know the situation, the circumstances surrounding this. I'm sorry?
And this is right under the bridge of where, I guess, just east of Hamburger Square, Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. If you know where that underpass is that the train goes over. Right by the sign, that lit up DGSO sign that Downtown Greensboro Incorporated put into place there a couple of years ago, kind of right across the street from Natty Greens.
So it looks like it's one person, and it appears that officers are checking this person's bag to see what is in there. It looks like some maybe water bottles coming out of that. But we were also looking at another scene where officers had surrounded a group, maybe about 5 people.
Right.
And then next to them, a line of officers formed right next to them. So maybe this is just a matter of kind of cordoning each group off as they push them along and trying to disperse them.
Sure.
And then maybe surrounding them.
Right, and this is all kind of occurring in that parking lot. If you're familiar with that downtown district, the parking lot between the W Restaurant and McCool's, and they've pushed them now west. You can see the Nathaniel Green statue in the background of the left shot, and it looks as though the officers are following them in that direction. Meantime, on the right, there's still, it looks as though someone is detained on the ground and they're going through this person's belongings or the things they have with them.
He had it, or they said he had it.
So if you just heard that police officer, he just said that it sounded like he said the person right here had something in their bag that was some sort of chemicals. I don't know if it's related to this specific scenario, but that's just what that officer said.
Chad, can you tell, is that person still sitting on the ground?
I don't know, it's hard to tell. There's something on the right. I see they handed out what looked to be like sanitizing, like Clorox wipes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, there is somebody who is now in handcuffs, headed to a police car eventually.
Okay, it's a police van. They're going to, I assume, load that person into that van.
And this, I would say, is significant because this is the first time that we have seen a protester get arrested in downtown Greensboro. As far as we know, only one counter-protester was arrested earlier in the day on Saturday. For the most part, Greensboro police have let the protesters do what they will, but this is the first time that we've seen somebody be detained.
For those of you just joining us, the curfew is now an hour in, and there was about 50 protesters along South Elm Street, and officers have been repeatedly telling that group that they were to disperse, if not they were to be arrested. And as you are watching right now, the first arrest we can see along South Elm Street, and of course we will continue to monitor that situation.
Right, and then the other camera was showing police officers continue to push a much smaller group of protesters down the street past the Nathaniel Green statue to, I guess, Eugene Street. And Aduria Chumba has been with one of our photographers and one of those cameras all day today. Aduria, what are you seeing now?
All right, I am at the intersection of West McGee and Federal, just looking towards the Greensboro Police Department there. You can see the officers there in lining up in that formation. It looks like the protesters have dispersed. We did not see or encounter them once we got to this point. We did see some individuals come and march up front, the police officers, but they have just walked away and there was no engagement. It was peaceful. You saw the police officers right there live on camera marching and pushing back on the protesters. And right now they are in front of the Greensboro Police Department. Again, I do not see any of the protesters. It looks like they have all dispersed. Again, this happening within the last hour. Once the officers came in about 30 minutes ago, and now everybody is sort of clearing out. And the curfew has been enforced there. Again, the protesters were peaceful. You saw that there was no engagement except for that one person that did get pulled into the vehicle and appears to have been arrested. I can't confirm that from my point of view, but it looks like that is what happened. We'll get more information specifically on that. But right now, as you can see right here in front of the police department, the police vehicles are moving away. The officers have gone towards the parking lot. We're going to follow them to see if there is anything happening on that side, but it doesn't appear that much is happening. They look like they're going back to their units and clustering over there in the parking lot. You can see the police vehicles are returning here as well. There's a caravan of them here coming up from Elm Street. Some of the unmarked vehicles from there. Again, all of this happening right here in downtown Greensboro. That curfew kicked in at 8. This is now 9:05. And it looks like the police have cleared the protesters here in the downtown area. From where we stand, from our vantage point, we do not see any of the protesters here anymore. Guys in the studio?
Yeah. Aduria, I do have one question for you. So, you know, from your vantage point, did you see whether the protesters left in groups, or did it look like they dispersed? Like, were they going to? Did it look like they were headed to another location as a group, or were they all just kind of going their own separate ways?
It looks like they dispersed. It is not clear how they got away. They just went ahead and just went away with their cars. But I do know that some of the organizers had cars. If people wanted to leave the area, they did say that there were vehicles for them to leave, and they were waiting for them. Those were allies in those vehicles. Helping the protesters out once they felt that they were no longer, able to continue, or it wasn't safe for them. So, there were people here who were standing by for them to get them out of here once it became, a dangerous situation for them. At one point, it did look like I kind of felt concerned for them because in terms of if the police were going to throw any tear gas or anything. We actually went behind the police line, just to avoid being in the line of, sight or fire of that canister once it was deployed. Again, I've been hit twice this weekend, and I don't think I wanted a taste of that once more. You can imagine if you were right in the thick of it, like those protesters were over the last 2 nights. Now, we're giving you different vantage points. We had earlier, Alma was on the other side of the police line, and I was standing around with the protesters until I felt that it wasn't safe enough for me to be on that side of that line, so I fell back to behind the police line. But again, those protesters were peaceful. They did emphasize that. And again, we can't take away from the reason that they gathered in the first place, talking about the injustice and police brutality and things like that. Again, this, curfew imposed to keep peace and order and prevent anybody from, vandalizing any property as we had seen in the past. And like I said, the protests over the weekend were pretty peaceful until night fell, and then we had some incidents. From my understanding, some of that was caused by people who were outsiders that came in. The protest organizers, once they left, once they were done with their protest, they dispersed peacefully. But you did have some of those people that hung around to cause destruction. We didn't see any of that tonight. Totally different. So we didn't see any of that stuff tonight, but here again, we are right here in front of the police department where we started this march when I got here. Now they're all dispersed and clearing out, getting back into the building. So that's it for me right now. I'm going to kind of walk around the city to see what else is happening here. Again, the streets are empty and there is that curfew now 1 hour and 8 minutes in. It's back to you guys at the studio.
Adori, thank you. So you're looking at her vantage point from right near the Greensboro Police Department headquarters. Let's head back now to another part of downtown Greensboro. We're going to check on Lewis and Elm Streets. That's where we find WFMY News 2's Alma McCarty. Alma, what are you seeing right now?
What we're seeing is police officers starting to head back toward down Elm Street. I'm actually going to walk with them. They were pushing a group of protesters, or the fringes of people who were walking away back down towards this end of downtown. What we really saw earlier today, or earlier just a couple of minutes ago, really, sorry, I'm just getting around to the other side. What we saw earlier, you wanted me to kind of walk you guys through what happened with the arrest. What appeared to have happened is a man was running, taking off. Police officers saw him and then ran across the street, tackling him to the ground. So I saw at least 2 people who were arrested. But other than that, Dure said, tear gas, pepper spray had to be deployed. The other 2 nights, that did not happen. Obviously, the police came out in force, wearing their tactical gear, wearing their face masks. However, from what we could see, there was really not a situation in which they used any of that. It appears as though at least a couple of people have been arrested, but now we are walking down what appears to be a very empty Elm Street. It appears that most of these protesters have gone home. At one point around the Natty Greens area, when Chad and Julie were kind of talking over the live video shot, police were in a line and they were walking close to the protesters, really, and the protesters shouted back, "Hey, arms up, we are walking to our vehicles. We are walking the people back to their vehicles so they can go home. We are going home, we are going home." Making that very, very clear because the police line did keep going closer and closer to these people. They got in their cars around the Carolina Theater area. So that's really what we have seen thus far. There was another guy who I saw being taken into the back of a police vehicle, appeared to be detained. Was not sure what the circumstances around that were. Was honestly not sure about the circumstances around the guy who was tackled to the ground under the screen. I'm going to send it back to you now.
This is Hamburger Square, and this is a live picture, and one of the protesters has climbed up on the General Greene statue and is just sitting there cross-legged, and some people on the ground taking photos of this person. What's around him, Chad? Are those candles?
It's hard to
tell. Are those
it
water
almost looks
bottles?
like a water bottle on both sides, potentially. Adure Chuma is actually out there with that camera right now. Adure, are you able to see what's going on there?
Yes, we just turned around and saw what was happening behind us here on the statue. You can see that protester, shirtless, is sitting down there. It appears it is his a silent protest. It's not clear if how he got up there, when he got up there, but he's up there. Those are photographers down there taking pictures. He's got bottles of water there for him, and I can see a police officer. It's not clear if he's coming in that direction. Well, it looks like he is going in the direction of the statue there. We're just going to follow that and let that play out for you and not interfere with the communication there that's going to, but you can see exactly what is happening. I'm going to keep quiet right now.
What you're looking at right now is a live picture in downtown Greensboro of a protester who has climbed up onto the General Nathaniel Greene statue at the roundabout 1 block west of Elm Street. We're not really sure how he got up there, but a couple of police officers have seen this and have now approached him, and they were talking with him. It wasn't clear what the exchange was, but they're walking away, and it looks as though either they're going to leave him there or they're going to get someone else to come and get him down. Keep in mind we are in a curfew right now. There are some photographers, I think probably print media around him taking photos of him. He has something written across his stomach. I'm not clear what it is, but he does have some water bottles up there. And he seems to be one of the few people who are left out here. We've seen dozens of protesters kind of scatter over the last 20 to 30 minutes, but he seems to be the only one, and now it looks like to be making jokes with some of the people who are down below.
Good spirits, holding up a hang 10 sign.
All right, so
Adori, you're
let
on
me give you a sense of what just happened.
Please do.
Yes, so this protester got up here. Those officers approached him and pretty much asked him a couple of questions. They chuckled, he explained himself, and it seems like they're just letting him do his thing. He's a silent protester there. He's got a writing on his belly that I can't quite read from my vantage point. Sir, can you tell me what's on you? Okay, it says the Constitution. He is there staging his silent protest. And how do you get up there, if I may ask? You just jump. Are you a skilled climber? Okay. Can you tell me why you're seated up there, if you don't mind?
Bringing attention to the revolution.
Okay. And what is your name? Where are you from? What's that?
Malik Davis.
Malik Davis. Where are you from, Malik?
I'm from Greensboro. I'm from Greenville. I'm from Jacksonville. I'm from Hawaii.
Okay. He's from Greenville, Jacksonville, Greensboro, and Hawaii. That's quite a continental mix there of the United States. And, you know, can you give us an expression of why you are here today, besides what is written on your belly? You can take your time.
Everyone knows why. That's all I can say.
All right, he says everybody knows why, and it is time. Again, just very short and simple expression there about why he's seated up there. Again, it's a silent protest here. The officers came and asked him those questions, and they let him do his thing. He's not bothering anyone that we see. He's up there, and they're keeping an eye on him here as he is seated up there with his water and taking his stand. Again. All right, so we're being told now the curfew is in effect, and so we're being told and reminded about that curfew right now. Again, they are letting this person be up here at the statue as the officers kind of like walk around and monitor the area. So right now, that is what we have for now. A lone protester left here at the statue making his grand stand about what is going on, and a firm stand there for the Constitution, if for lack of a better phrasing.
Adori, if you could try to yell up to him, can you ask him how long he plans to stay up there? And not only that, and the police are surrounding him. How long do they plan to allow him to continue his silent protest?
All right, it looks like the police are just clearing off. They're letting him be, like I explained earlier. But I'm going to ask him, hey, Malik, how long do you plan to be here?
All night, probably.
All right, he says he's going to be here all night. And like I said, the officers are leaving him alone. Those other officers that came to question him, they're clearing all the other vehicles away from the area, and they're letting him be. Again, like I said, he's not disturbing anyone. He's there as a lone protester on his own, and it looks like they're just going to let him be while they clear the other vehicles away from this area. No, I'm still live on air. Are you? Okay, all right. He says he'll talk to me when I'm done on air, so he's handling his thing.
So a lot has transpired here in the last 45 minutes. I mean, we saw the height of what could have turned into something that was eerily similar to the last couple of nights, and it didn't. I mean, it de-escalated quickly.
Absolutely. Officers have been out there. They formed a line. They were very verbal. They told them, if you do not disperse, if you don't go home, you could be arrested. You heard Alma McCarty say that she witnessed two people. We only saw one person on video, but she said she saw two people be detained. We'll still learn some more information. I have reached out to Greensboro Police regarding, can you give us more details? I do want to reach out to them as well. I know Adora is going to talk to them, but why will they allow this one gentleman, Malik, up on the statue when really no one should be out because this curfew is in place? Sure, and
you know, we've been talking about these arrests. We do have, I want to play this video back of the one arrest we did see, just to set the scene here for you. This is right under the train bridge, just east of Hamburger Square, right there at Elm Street, where it intersects with Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. And there was a gentleman, when we saw the initial part of this video, he was on the ground in handcuffs, and police officers were going through his property, and then they've picked him up, and here we are, and he's getting put into the back of a police van. This is significant because, as I've mentioned, this potentially is the first or second arrest of the entire protest for the past 3 days. There was one counter-protester who was arrested early on Saturday, but this would be the first.
Here's the other thing, setting the stage here. Over the last 3 days, there have been mainly peaceful protests. It's really at the nighttime hours when they have started to get out of hand. On Saturday night, we saw a lot of destruction. Sunday night, last night, we saw that as well. In all, about 60 businesses are saying in downtown Greensboro, saying that they have had some sort of damage. And tonight at 11, we're going to show you some video. It's just surprising and just shocking and really just disheartening to see some of these poor businesses, what they have gone through, already dealing with their shops closed for months, but in addition, getting damaged because of looters. Greensboro Police continue to say that it is outsiders who have caused the damage. Tonight, as you heard from Malik, he's from really all over, but also from Greensboro, not causing any problems, and that is what we want to see. It's okay to protest peacefully. The difference here tonight is that the curfew is in place.
Right, and Aduri Jimba actually just talked with police officers to ask more about Malik on the Nathaniel Green statue. Aduri, what did you learn?
All right, so I chatted briefly with the officers. They've just asked us to just kind of leave the area and just, you know, not encourage any action right there. They're just going to try to have a conversation with him, you know, possibly negotiate with him peacefully to get down. They said if he didn't get down, and they're just going to let him do his thing. So they're just over there, just standing in the corner there on the other side, on the Green Street side of the statue there, and they're letting him be, just watching him. Again, like I said, the officer told me that they're just going to try to have conversations with him, see if he can get down peacefully. Malik says he plans to be there all night, and I'm not sure if he's going to acquiesce to the officers asking him to get down, but they are going to do it peacefully, they said, since he is not interrupting or disrupting anything. So that's what we know now.
All right. Well, there you have it. And I suppose they wanted all our cameras away, some of the other cameras, to not cause so much attention, because I suppose it's possible police think they'll make more of a scene than the scene that's currently being had.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, this is what this is all about. It is about the dialogue. And if police are saying, like, listen, you know, we can handle this, let's just have this discussion with Malik. He's really, you know, just not really doing anything besides, I know it is the curfew, but if they feel as if, you know, this is the best way to diffuse the situation, then you know what, we're going to give them space. You know, we're listening to officers just as we continue to follow the curfew and get the message out, because some people are saying, like, oh, the media, you're drawing too much attention to this. But on the flip side, as a news organization, if things get out of hand, it is our responsibility too to be able to tell you what is happening in your area. So, you know, we have a responsibility as well.
Right. So it has been an interesting hour and a half here since you've been with us. If you've been with us the whole time, thank you so much. We do appreciate it. It seems as though things have died down a little bit, and we are going to regroup. We're going to let our teams out in the field get a little breather before the 11 o'clock news. We'll see you on television at 11 in just about an hour and a half. Thanks for watching, and have a safe night.